The C major chord is literally out of tune. Doesn't sound like it, right? Well, by the end of this video, you're gonna know what it should sound like, and we will have broken your ability to enjoy music ever again.
Oh no!
Okay, not really, you'll be totally fine, but for a moment, it'll be like one of those optical illusion things where you like stare at the dot and then when you look away, everything's all wavy and weird. Yeah, we're gonna do that, but with your ears. Check it out. So what we're talking about today are tuning systems, more specifically, how math basically broke music forever and somehow doesn't actually work for making all of this make sense.
By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
Well, buckle up, because this one's gonna get weird. Okay, first things first, you are about to hear a C major chord in a way that maybe you've never heard it before. And when you hear this, you can never go back. You will always know that the C major chord is out of tune. First, let's remind ourselves what it sounds like normally. Okay, now, here's what the C major chord is supposed to sound like. Trippy, right? It almost takes on like the purity of a perfect fifth. There's this thing that happens with intervals that I always refer to as like a frequency rub. It's like how much we're hearing these notes conflict with each other, and there's different intervals that do this more or less. If we play an octave, obviously there's no rub, it's like perfect. It's so smooth, there's no oscillation going on in our ears. If we play a fifth, well, now we've introduced a new note that is not just the same note an octave apart. In this case, we're playing C and G together, and when we hear both of those notes together, there actually is somewhat of a rub there. But because a perfect fifth is a very pleasing interval, that rub is still extremely smooth. It's like if we had to draw a line of what's happening in our ears, we could represent that by like a nice smooth sine wave almost. And that rub just gets harsher and more difficult to listen to the more that rub becomes a thing. We can hear this by playing an interval that is much more dissonant. Think, for example, a major seventh. Oof. Hear how just with these two notes by themselves, we get this really quick oscillation thing going on, right? And then same thing we can do with like a minor second, right? We can hear that sort of rub, that oscillation in our ears going much, much quicker. It's not as nice to listen to. So the crazy thing about when we hear a C major chord with perfect tuning is that it almost sounds like a fifth. Let's hear it one more time. Okay, ready? I'm gonna wreck your world now. This is gonna suck. This is gonna be the worst thing ever because this is what music sounds like all the time. Let's go back to the conventional tuning of a C major chord. Ready? It's out of tune. It's out of tune. Why can we not have nice things?
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine.
I can never listen to music the same way again. It's fine. This is fine. Okay, so why is this a thing? Why do we actually play the C major chord out of tune? Why can't it just sound like this all the time? Well, the answer is math. More specifically, if we tune the C major chord that perfectly, let's try a different chord. Right. Okay, so this is why we can't have nice things. What even is this? What are we hearing? Why is this so whacked out? Well, the answer is absolutely fascinating. If you enjoy the content on this channel and you always thought it would be cool to be able to do what I do on this channel, which is just listen to music and kind of just immediately know how it's constructed. Well, that all comes from just a little bit of knowledge about the building blocks of music. And for me, playing the piano, because I use the piano to kind of put all that into context and understand it. And that's one of the reasons that I built my Intro to Piano course. It has everything you need to get started playing this instrument and also a lot about the basic building blocks of music. So if you've always wanted to just listen to any song and know how it goes, and then have some skills to actually be able to play it yourself, then use the link in the description to check out the Intro to Piano course. It is 50% off currently, but that only lasts until the end of this week. So there's just a few days left to take advantage of that. And my courses are the way that I've decided to support this channel. In the past, I've done maybe the more traditional YouTube thing and taken sponsors and things like that, and I always thought it would just be so much cooler if I could build something myself that was specifically for you, to help you understand the things that I understand. Because I know from experience that music is easier than you think, whether it's playing the piano or even just understanding some things about the basic building blocks of music. My Intro to Piano course is all of that knowledge packaged in a way that I wish it had been explained to me when I was growing up. Everything that I've learned that has worked for me and made sense to me, and that I use in every single video where I tell you about the amazing things in music. I mean, understanding music on a deeper level literally supercharges your ability to enjoy it. You see how enthusiastic I get about the things I listen to. When you're hearing things and you immediately are like, yo, that's this, like, it just makes listening to music so much more fun. I can't tell you the countless nights that my friends and I have spent driving somewhere, either to or from a gig, just listening to one thing over and over again, literally screaming in the car. It's just so much fun when you enjoy music on a deeper level, and that's what the Intro to Piano course is designed to help you do. It gives you what you need to get started on this instrument, and it teaches you a lot of the basic building blocks of music. So if you want to take advantage of that 50% off sale, there's only a few days left to do that, so use the link in the description down below. And by doing so, you're supporting what I do here on this channel, and I'm so appreciative of that support. So thank you so much for checking that out. So throughout history, there have been a number of different tuning systems. And by tuning systems, we literally just mean like, how are we actually going to tune all of these notes to hopefully work together in some way? And the first system we're going to talk about is the Pythagorean tuning system. Right, that same guy with the theorem a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Yeah, there's a whole story about him coming up with this tuning system, but the important thing for you to know is that the Pythagorean tuning system is based on fifths. Here's what I mean. In the Pythagorean tuning system, the thought is that if you create a series of perfect fifths, you will work your way around the key circle, and every single fifth will be as perfect as it possibly can be when we're talking about math. The ratios will be spot on, and you can work your way all around the circle and account for all 12 notes. And the way that we kind of can show that is if we go... That is the circle of fifths, laid out in a line from the bottom of the piano to the top. But since that's kind of a mess, we can kind of condense it into one octave by going like this. Now the Pythagorean tuning system says if you create a perfect fifth for all of these, you will have the most mathematically perfect way of tuning. Here's the problem. If we do that, when we go to close the loop, the way the math works out, it's not actually possible to close the loop perfectly. You will end up with an interval that is completely just not in tune. Without diving too far into the math of why this happens, here's the easiest way to explain what's happening here. So Pythagoras said just make a perfect fifth ratio, which is 3/2, and do that 12 times to get all the way around the circle, covering all 12 notes. Makes sense? 3/2 equals 1.5, so we can look at this as 1.5 to the power of 12. However, what we're really doing is just trying to go up this 12-note set 7 times, or 7 octaves. An octave is 2/1, or just 2. And so we can look at that as 2 to the power of 7. Here's where we can see the problem. While 2 to the power of 7 equals a nice round 128, 1.5 to the power of 12 equals 129.746. Well, these numbers are obviously different, which is why we get this. And it's why the Pythagorean tuning system doesn't really work. See, the Pythagorean tuning system works well when we're talking about fifths because that's what it's tuned for. But the second we start to introduce thirds, it kind of just falls apart. Okay, so that's not gonna work because the thirds are just a mess. Well, what if we actually tuned specifically for the sake of the third instead of the fifth? Well, we get now the mean tone temperament system. This is a different type of tuning system that was based on the major third instead of the perfect fifth. And it actually created some really cool results. We can hear that really nice C major chord in this tuning system. But it had its own flaw as well. For similar math and ratio reasons, we also can't really account for all 12 notes efficiently. When we deal with any chord that uses more than just one, maybe 2 accidentals in certain cases, this one just falls apart as well. It's like we can get good chords out of, C, F, G, A, maybe D. Even E flat is okay, but when we start talking about like G flat or B or A flat, it completely falls apart. Ugh. It is a little bit rough. All right, so that's not gonna work either. So now we have to think about how can we fix this tuning system? How about another system that is based on math? Enter the just intonation system. Now the concept behind just intonation was basically like, hey, why don't we take all of the potential intervals and the ratios that accompany them, and let's just make the ratios themselves, the numbers, the math, let's just make those nice whole numbers so that everything is nice and easy to look at, and it's very closely based on the naturally occurring harmonic overtone series. And that's just the thing that everything in the universe seems to vibrate with. We can observe the harmonic overtone series basically everywhere we look. So Just Intonation was like, well, let's take that and let's basically just make these nice whole round number ratios, and we get some, again, pretty interesting results. There's our C major chord that is so perfect to listen to. But this also introduces some issues as well, and we can see that when we start to move away from the key that this tuning system bases itself in. Now, with all of these, could we theoretically take the best parts of them and just tune everything on the fly so that it's all based on that, right? So maybe if we're in the key of A flat, we could just tune the whole thing based on A flat, not based on C. Wouldn't that account for it? Well, theoretically, yes, and this is one of the reasons why there are actually a lot of instruments that can do this. Some fretted instruments, string instruments, even wind instruments can do this as well. And I have a theory. I think it's one of the reasons why a cappella harmony, or just like vocal harmony in general, is so pleasing to our ears. Really great vocal harmony is absolutely incredible because humans have the ability to just tune by ear on the fly. We don't even have to think about the tuning system we're in. We can just like slightly adjust our voices so that we're creating this ultra perfect harmony no matter where we are, no matter what chord it is, no matter what key it is, no matter what interval it is. We can tune everything perfectly on the fly just using our ears. So I think that's one of the reasons why the human voice in harmony is one of the best sounds that exists. But I can't do that on the piano. I'm stuck with whatever tuning system is decided upon ahead of time, and there's not a whole lot that I can do to fix it. So there's gotta be a solution. There's gotta be some way where we can solve the math problem, but like make everything sound as good as possible no matter where we're playing. And that is where we get our modern Western tuning system, Equal Temperament. And I say Western tuning system because in different parts of the world and different cultures and different points throughout history, there are all kinds of different tuning systems. And so there is not one way to tune in the correct manner. But Equal Temperament is what we decided on to build this instrument so that we could play in any key and have it work reasonably well. But that doesn't come without its sacrifices. Equal Temperament is very simple. If we take a perfect octave, and we know that we want 12 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, before repeating, we're simply going to divide all of those notes evenly. Makes complete sense, right? But here's the thing. If you actually look at the math of different intervallic relationships, we're gonna be slightly off with some of them. Because what Equal Temperament really is an approximation of a tuning system that's just like as close as we can get it if we want to be able to play in any key at any given time. It's why we can't have a C major chord that sounds like this, and instead we have to deal with something that sounds like this. Now, when you put the two of them right next to each other, it's very clear to hear that the Equal Temperament C major chord literally does sound out of tune. And that's because it is. It is the closest approximation that we can have that allows us to then also play an A flat major chord and have that sound reasonably in tune. But you know, so much of our understanding of harmony and what we view as being in tune or not in tune does come from exposure and environment. I mean, if we go back to the example of like Balinese gamelan music, if that's the environment that you're familiar with, if your ears are accustomed to that, maybe it sounds completely normal. It's for this reason that Equal Temperament works. It can be out of tune, and because of the sheer popularity of the tuning system, our ears and our brains just sort of like accept it as being like, yeah, that's it. It's close enough. So I guess close actually counts in horseshoes, hand grenades, and tuning systems. So while we would love for every C major chord to sound like this, reality is, if we want to be able to play in any key, we have to deal with this. But as long as you don't constantly play them back to back and drive yourself absolutely insane, this can sound just fine. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget, there's just a few days left to grab the Intro to Piano course at 50% off. That's all for today, and we'll see you in the next one.